Well, thanks a lot for coming on, mate. I'm so stoked about this. It's brilliant.
So I have to ask you, where are you from originally?
I'm from the UK in the southwest of England. I started riding quite late, and we did a trip through sort of Europe, and I've ended out in the south of Spain here now. So yeah, UK southwest in Cornwall, a little county.
Are you in
called
Spain
Cornwall.
now?
Yeah, in Spain now. Yeah.
So where was that bike park you went to that was like pretty much all sand?
That was that's the Sierra Nevada. So the ski resort up in the Sierra Nevada, because the top of the Sierra Nevada is like 10,000 feet. Oh, what's that?
Is that like Madeira or something?
No, it's up near Granada, but it's a quite I don't know how long the bike park's been going, and I've got very little experience with bike parks. I've ridden in Wales, Bike Park Wales it's called, which is it's uplifted but by like a van and stuff, so it's very different. But the Sierra Nevada is the first kind of uplifted in like ski resort type riding that I've done. It's a bit, I think they could still do a lot better with the place, but it's fine for me as a bike park beginner. It's good. What you don't realise about bike parks and stuff is like when I watch footage and stuff, because the GoPro and everything is kind of with you, you kind of point it down and it stays with you. You don't see the gradient. So when you do drop-offs and stuff, when you then factor in landing 6 or 10 feet further down the trail on an incline like that, all of a sudden the drop-off is a bit different, isn't it?
Yeah, it's totally different.
Yeah. So so like I follow your channel loads. Like you used to be a pro mountain biker, but you don't race anymore then? A downhill racer?
Yeah, so in mountain biking, the term pro is kind of like used a little bit liberally.
Yeah.
It's essentially a classification of your category. It's not necessarily doesn't mean that you're making money.
Right. Okay.
If that makes any sense.
I was just going to say, because like in certain things, when you're considered a pro, nothing comes to mind at the minute. But you earn like a pro card, or is it like just when you've got sponsorship, or?
Yeah. So there's depending in like. You know, if you're coming from like the skateboarding side, like when you turn pro, that's when you get like your signature model, like skateboard or something. Same with BMX, but in mountain biking, you turn pro, at least in racing, when you earn your pro license, which honestly isn't that hard to earn.
So I wanted to ask you specifically, because when Brian offered really he kind of, because I've been like a pro level sponsor for him for a while, so I've been talking to Brian a bit, and it's been really, really good. And one of the things that he's been kind of pushing me to do is like, as with any business, contact people, and this is a YouTube channel, but same difference really, is to network and contact people. And he just said to me that he would be open to do like a call like this with me. And so that got me thinking, and then once I started thinking about all the different guys like you that I would want to talk to, like I started going through my head, like, what would I want to talk to Phil about? What would I want to talk to Alex about? And it's basically, to start off with, I spoke to Brian about guided riding, because he does a lot of guided riding, and I'm absolutely terrified of guided rides, because I've not been like riding all my life like you guys. My fitness is kind of a bit to be desired, so it was good to talk to him about that. But yeah, when I thought about you and Alex, I started to think about what the hooks are of all the channels. So what it is that makes me watch your stuff. So with Brian, he's very good at riding and commentating. So it's quite easy to watch a 15-minute video of his, because he really immerses you in it quite well, doesn't he? The way that he talks to the camera. And then Alex is similar. I find Alex just quirky and fun to watch. Like he does pretty stupid shit on his bike, doesn't he? He's pulling manuals in places that you just wouldn't expect people to pull manuals. He's really entertaining to watch. But yours, mate, is just the absolute insane speed. I've put it on a few of your videos now. I mean, there's lots of stuff that I watch, there's lots of reasons that I watch all the channels, but with yours, it's just the speed is the thing that sticks out to me the most. Do you find, like, when I'm watching my own footage back, I think because of the perspective that the GoPro has, that sometimes you don't have the same. Like sometimes people comment to me, Luke, I can't understand how you can see the trail. When you watch your footage back, do you think that as well? Do you think, I don't know how I manage that?
That's a good question, because I feel like in real life, the way you process information is much different than when you're watching a video. Just because like there's like, I feel like I'm processing like the sounds like that my bike's making, and like I can generally look at the tire tracks, because like obviously the GoPro doesn't pick up the same quality video as your eyes do.
Yeah.
Or whatever you want to call it. And so I feel like I can kind of interpret like the way like the previous tire tracks have gone, that like I know what to expect coming up, because a lot of the trails that you see, not in like the Northeast, but like down south, I'm riding blind, so I kind of have to interpret what I expect to come next.
Yeah, that's right. Like you say, it's immersive as the gimbals are these days, and they are great. You still kind of, it's not the same as riding a bike, is it? You can't feel everything that's happening with the bike. You can't tilt. You can't look around with the GoPro through a video as much as you can with your head. But it's still like the way I think about it, especially with Brian's and Alex's channels and the other channels that I watch, is if I was teleported onto their saddle, so them teleported off the bike and me teleported on it, I'm not saying I could ride anywhere near as fast as them, but I feel like I wouldn't die instantly, whereas like if I teleported onto your bike, it feels like that would be it. I would just crash and burn in a second, like really in a second. So when you ride when you ride in general, because when you hear like pro mountain biker and stuff like that, you totally don't have to answer this question, but it's obviously something I'm going to be mega interested in.
Oh, go ahead.
But like when you rode with Nate is quite a good example. In terms of speed, how do you measure up against someone like Nate Hills or Brian or Alex or any of those guys?
Yeah, so we'll use Nate as an example. Mm-hmm. So when I rode behind Nate back in at Kingdom, and I think it was Burke Mountain, one of the things that I found interesting is on a lot of those trails, like the trees were really close together. And so one of the things I found difficult was knowing where the trail was going, because a lot of times in a turn, he would be blocking some of the trees that he was like, snaking around. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't necessarily that I had a hard time keeping up with his speed. It was the fact that like sometimes he would block something that if you're in front you would be able to see, but because there's an obstacle in your way, being the person, you couldn't see those obstacles, and you had a little bit less time to react. However, having ridden with Nate and a lot of other, I guess, professional riders, you tend to know where everyone like follows in place, and generally, like, everyone can do about the same things. Like, if there's a drop coming up, like, it's not a big deal. We've all been there for the most part. The things where it gets a little bit more complicated is, like, maybe like a rock garden. If someone's ridden a rock garden that has a crap ton of different lines, and they know those lines versus the person behind them who's never ridden it, that's when the person in front, like, may want to slow down to help the person behind, because that's the harder part. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, totally. Yeah, so it's kind of when you're riding together, because that's what I was really trying to get to grips with is, like I say, when I watch your footage, it definitely feels very different, and I don't mean like your footage is amazing and everyone else is terrible. I just mean there's a very different feel when I watch your stuff. I'm genuinely quite like, oh my god, he's just going, like I say, I can, and like you say, it's interesting what you said just now about processing information. If you picture yourself as a computer on a mountain bike and you're just processing the information that's coming towards you, and how you can't expect to be able to do that same thing when you're looking through the lens of a GoPro on a screen that might be tinier, like a mobile phone screen. But I still can't process, like, generally I can process what Brian's doing, I can process what Alexander's doing, but sometimes with you it's just like you go barreling into corners. I just like it just doesn't make sense to me. I can't quite process it. So it does look, and I was just trying to get a feel really for if you feel like you are. Yeah, and I know that these are hard questions to ask, because you can't just say, oh yeah man, I'm a demon on a bike, I'm really, really fast. But there is a noticeable difference between how fast you go versus, and I think when you rode with Alex recently, that came to light a little bit as well, wasn't it? Because Alex just seemed totally in awe of the way you were popping off stuff and the speed that you could pick up. So he felt the same way as well when he was actually seeing you, I guess. Yeah,
no, that's definitely the vibe I got. And first of all, I have to say that dude improved a crap ton from like the first ride to the last ride. He definitely like got way more comfortable with bike parks, and I was totally blown away with how much progress and confidence he gained from that whole trip. Not to mention, he's a totally fun guy to ride with all over the place. I love it. Can you repeat the question? I kind of lost the train of my thought.
No, yeah. Well, like I said, it was just I was just trying to put the connection. I was trying to figure out for myself why it is that you look so fast in GoPro footage by comparison to almost everyone else, and I can't tell if it's just the speed or if it's just because you really do get big air off everything you hit, don't you? And you spend a lot of time in bike parks, which I guess perhaps is unfair to the guys that ride trail a lot more. But it feels like you're a lot faster.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to like toot my own horn because I don't like bragging, but I was at the point where I was racing World Cups when I stopped racing. And just to put things into perspective, at the Wyndham World Cup, even though I crashed my race run, my sector 2 time, so they divide like a race course into splits. So you have the first split and then the second split. But then like in between the splits, you have the sectors. So if you have 2 splits, you have 3 sectors. Mm-hmm. My sector 2 time ended up being the 8th fastest of the day, right in front of someone like G. Atherton.
Wow.
So I definitely have a little bit more of a racing background, and I think that translates into what you see on video, because I'll tend to take a little bit more straighter line sometimes, like when I'm just going fast, whereas if I'm going a slower pace, I might kind of take the leisurely route with like a little bit more jumps and that kind of stuff.
And so your kind of background in, let me just turn that email off so as I don't get that bing bong. Jeez. Your background, so like as someone that started riding quite late on in life, so like I spend a lot of my time feeling quite out of control on the bike because I like going fast. I think my mentality, like I'm not a big like whooper, so when I'm riding I'm not going woo woo like as I go around everything, because I just kind of zoom in. I almost kind of get quite intense and get quite angry at myself if I'm not fast enough around stuff. As like a downhill racer, you definitely look like you have a lot of fun on a bike, and I have a lot of fun on a bike as well. But so that downhill background, that kind of, that's the way you ride then all the time. Is you try and be as pinned out as you can all the time, or are you looking for fun lines or?
It depends. Like sometimes I'll go out and I'm just in the mood to go for a ride and just put in miles, and like I'll just like, I'll get to a fast section and I'm just like, like blah blah. And then sometimes like if I'm in a good mood and like I'm just like, it depends on my mood. If I'm in a really good mood, I'll like pin it. And then sometimes I'm a little bit bored of this trail, so I'm gonna go slower and see if I can find lines that I've never seen before and take the like more fun poppy. So it really depends on the day, because I don't always go like full gas. Maybe for the camera I'll do a little bit more than usual. However, a lot of times, especially if I'm riding with some of my friends who might not be as quick as me, I'll take my time and I'll like find some little bump jumps on the side and just try to enjoy my ride. So I'm not trying to ditch them. We both want to enjoy a ride. So
yeah, I find it so fascinating because you can only go off the way that you ride yourself. Because like I say, because I don't manage to link up with so many people to go riding. Yeah, I find it quite fascinating the whole kind of speed thing, and people that have been riding for so many years and get sort of so good, so sort of competent on a bike, especially with you being, like you say, an ex-pro. So when you do like a really fast drop like that, like is it like when you're driving? So like sometimes when I'm driving not particularly fast, I go into autopilot, and sometimes it doesn't happen very often, but sometimes you'll get somewhere 10 miles away and you'll be like, I don't really remember driving here, just because you go into autopilot. Do you ever do you feel 100% in control all the time, making conscious decisions, or does it just automatically happen?
That's actually a really interesting point, and something I think there's a huge psychological component to. I'm going to talk about racing here, like a fast race run. I think once you start thinking about, I need to drop my shoulder, drop my outside foot, and you're thinking about all these things you need to do in a turn. I think you end up riding. You're thinking too much. And the best riding you do is when you're completely on autopilot and you're just reacting to things that are coming at you. That doesn't mean you're not thinking here and there about, what line should I take here? But definitely being on autopilot is what I found to be the key to going, I guess, quicker.
Yeah, yeah.
At least in the terms of a like racing context, because you're not stressing out about making a mistake. You're just reacting.
Yeah, yeah. And do you think that feeds into, because like fear, like if I'm standing in front of a drop off, you're stood there thinking about it. You, like you say, analysing, trying to think how the best way to do it is, because I've not done loads of jumps and drop offs, as if you saw some of those videos from Sierra Nevada. And when you stand and think about something, fear becomes a massive factor. Whereas if you're bombing it down something, if you're riding blind, you'll probably come up against obstacles that are very similar to the kind of stuff that you'll look at and analyse and talk yourself out of, and you'll do it no problem whatsoever. Do you think that whole autopilot mode is what kind of stifles the fear that could come into it, or do you just not feel too much fear on a mountain bike anyway?
Great point. Yeah, I definitely do get scared at some points, and that's when I start thinking about things too much. And I think that the autopilot mode, if you will, is definitely one of the keys to riding more fluidly. Because I'll kind of, I don't know if flipping the question, I'll put it in a different context. Crashing. I hate crashing. I'm scared of crashing. I know how to crash. And knock on wood, but most times that I encounter a crash, I just react and go into autopilot. I don't think about putting my arm down or, how to like smoothly roll over my shoulder. It just happens and I react to it.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't do that. I land straight on my ribs every time. I cannot figure out. Like, every time I crash, I seem to just go like that. And then the first thing so my right ribs over the last couple of months have taken an absolute hammering, to the point that I now am starting to wear I'm having to wear body armor while I recover.
Yeah. So one of the first things you learn in gymnastics is just like how to roll and all of that basic stuff. And then of course I also had a trampoline growing up. And I think the combination of those two things helped me learn how to crash safely. Because like on a trampoline, you're doing flips and stuff. Like you're not going to land all of them. You kind of learn how to safely exit out of a flip. And that stuff is kind of what I learned from gymnastics. And I think whether you're taking judo or gymnastics, I think that component, or tumbling, would really help out a lot of riders prolong how much they ride, because it will prevent injuries.
Yeah, that's right. I think I really wish I was in the same boat and had done something like that when I was young, because like I say, I think perhaps I need to get into a bit of stretching or yoga or something like that, because I'm a plus 200 pound guy anyway. I could stand to lose a little bit of weight, but not a lot. I'll still be big. So the whole agility thing is just kind of out of the question for me at the minute. I feel confident in my abilities, but yeah, definitely when I crash, I just feel like a sack of potatoes hitting the floor every time. It feels not good every time I crash.
I think there definitely is something to be said about being athletic off the bike that will help translate to being on the bike. And that doesn't mean I am a great athlete, because if give me a basketball or soccer ball, it's miserable.
Yeah.
But I can jump pretty high and all that kind of crap. Yeah. But with that being said, I'm not very flexible. I mean, I'm flexible enough, but it's not something that I have really focused on and put much effort into. So I don't think flexibility, I mean, it's important to a degree, but I don't think flexibility is the key. I think mobility, if you've ever watched any of James Wilson's stuff, I highly recommend it. I've learned a lot from that guy, just kind of spitballing stuff and little tad bits of information from him. Really bright guy. So I think mobility is a little bit more important than necessarily flexibility.
And then I just wanted to ask a little bit about, because your videos I've only been watching for about, I don't know, 6 months, maybe 9 months now, because that's when I really started subscribing to YouTube and kind of using YouTube properly, other than to just figure out how to fix something that I'd broken, But your videos feel quite different at the minute. This vlog style of video, and seeing you with some people, with some fans and stuff that you meet on the trail, it's been real different. I absolutely love the thrills with Phil, where it's just and it's just amazing riding. But the vlog style stuff, is that something that you're gonna keep going with now?
It's definitely something I'm going to be playing around with a little bit more. I've always had a hard time incorporating my personality into a video. I'm my worst critic, and I know a lot of times, especially in front of a camera, I'll stumble over my words way more than I would normally. Like in this situation, I'm talking pretty naturally, but put a camera in front of me and it's a whole different story. So I like the vlog style because it helps me show my personality, but also helps teach some other things I wouldn't have been able to do otherwise. Because like in some of my skills videos, there's a lot of information that I would have loved to included, but I didn't know where to fit them in. Because I'm like really particular about like, it has to kind of go in sequential order, and there's just like pieces of information. I was like, this doesn't really fit in, so I'm just gonna like cut it. And I feel like because of the vlog format is a little bit less polished, that's okay, and it just feels a little bit more natural.
Yeah, that's right. There's a big difference between trying to. It can become a little bit too scripted, can't it? And it puts a bit more pressure on you to try and get it right. And then if you get into that mentality, you become a bit of a perfectionist, I guess. So but the vlogs have been, I think the vlogs have been massive. Really, your personality comes across, but to see you riding with Haley and to see you meeting people on the trail and stuff, it's totally makes you be able to identify. Like having a phone call with you now, up until the vlogs, it's the equivalent of me phoning, George Clooney. I've only seen you on TV, like on a screen, and not had any interaction with you. But as soon as the vlogging starts, something changes, I think, in the relationship between the viewer and the guy on the TV.
Yeah, I can say I had that experience with Casey Neistat and a bunch of other. I don't follow that many vloggers, but there's definitely people who have done a more vlog style format, and it's actually what kind of got me to start doing YouTube. I found myself when I was looking up how to use cameras and all that crap on YouTube, that I was starting to develop a relationship with these people who had no idea who I was. I was just interested in. Well, I originally was just interested in how to use this camera, and now I was interested in their life.
Yeah.
And it was this weird phenomena that I didn't understand. But I was like, oh, there's something here.
Yeah. You can. Casey Neistat's a hard act to follow, wouldn't he? It's hard, like. I think you can end up putting like for me as well, when I'm recording and stuff like that, I feel a lot of pressure to be interesting. You know what I mean? Like you think of yourself as not being that interesting because you see Casey Neistat going through New York on a frigging boosted board with like he just lives like the most extravagant life you can imagine. So yeah, vlogging is something that takes a lot of guts, doesn't it, to try and present yourself.
Yeah, I don't think there's like ever going to be a point where I'm like always like Casey Neistat like with a camera in front of me, just like I don't think I'll ever get to that point. But I like having a camera here because you're a fly on the wall. It kind of immerses you in the situation that you wouldn't have access to otherwise.
Yeah. Let me just check a few of my questions, mate. Sorry, were you going to say something then?
I had something to say. Yeah, because like if you look back at some of my early videos, those were really hard for me because when I was trying to teach certain skills, I was very particular about some of the words I would use, and obviously I wanted to cut out my ums, ahs, because I say that quite a bit, and I only noticed that once I start recording a video and then I throw it into Final Cut Pro. I'm like, whoa.
Yeah.
But so I was very particular about the word choice I would use to try to be very specific about the movements. And one of the things I realized is like I could be as specific as possible, and like I would still get the same questions even if I had not been that specific. So I've kind of learned that doesn't make that much of a difference, but my early videos, I was very concentrating on making sure I didn't say anything that could be incorrectly interpreted.
Oh, right. Yeah, so that makes it like, because stuff like that never even. I mean, I don't do the skills tutorials, and especially not as well, or like as largely received as they are, but as your stuff is. But yeah, that when you start breaking it down to that many levels of trying to get things right, it feels like almost an impossible situation for you, like to try and nail it.
Yeah, like I'll give you like one specific example of something that's always been really hard for me to describe. I'm not a very good wordsmith, but so in the manual, you've always heard like, you're not pulling with your arms, yada yada. But I think at the same time that could be confusing to a lot of people because, if you're hanging from like a pull-up bar, you're just hanging up, there is tension in your arms essentially because you're gripping on, and that's kind of a similar tension to like what you're doing in a manual situation, because there is tension going through your arms, but you're not necessarily lifting through your arms. And I think that's a situation where people are like, I don't understand what you're talking about.
Yeah, I guess I can't manual for love nor money. I've actually built that manual machine that I'm going to start using, but I think now that you word it like that, I think really your arms are the anchor point, aren't they? Your arms are just anchoring you to the bars, and then your body is doing the work, isn't it, I guess?
Yeah, it's a very like hard way to describe it. I'm sure there's people who are like can describe it easily, but for me it was like something that took me a while to figure out exactly how I wanted to say.
Yeah, for sure. And then I want to come on to Hayley a little bit as well. So did you guys? She was riding already before you met, or did you get her into riding? I think she was already riding, wasn't she?
Correct. So she actually went to the school that I'm going right now.
Okay.
So she graduated 2 years ago. I started school when I was 24 years old, so I was a little bit older when I started college. And so she had gone into school right out of high school. So I met her when I was older, but in terms of like schooling, she was older than me.
Yeah.
But we have a collegiate cycling team, and so you meet a ton of riders on that team. That's how I met Hayley.
Ah, cool. So that's just, man, that's like the holy grail for a lot of dudes in there that ride mountain bikes, is to be able to go and ride a mountain bike with your missus, for sure.
It's awesome. And the crazy thing is, she was from New Hampshire, which is not a huge state. It has maybe like 1 million people total in population, maybe a little bit more. Especially in the downhill scene or the mountain bike scene, you tend to know quite a few of those riders. When I started school there, I didn't know her at all, and I was from the same state as she was. So it was like, how do I not know her?
Yeah. And she's like a shredder as well, isn't she? You can see that she's not messing. She's pretty handy on a bike, isn't she?
She's a really well-rounded rider. In terms of she used to race downhill, and then she's also done a lot of road racing, some cyclocross racing. She has a lot of she knows a lot more than I do in a lot of situations. So I'm always asking her what she thinks of like this situation, especially if like something silly like road cycling. I know nothing about road cycling, and she's quite knowledgeable about that subject, even though that's not her favorite thing to do.
Yeah, so because that's what strikes me is so she would be more towards the kind of cross-country fitness side of cycling, like naturally. Is that her thing, really?
She's a very skilled climber. That's one of her. She's really good at like technical climb trails, but she's not. I guess you could consider her more of a cross-country rider, but she definitely falls, I think, a little bit closer to a downhill rider than a full-on XC rider. Yeah,
because that's the downhill side of stuff is really, because the downhill is obviously your playground, isn't it? And then obviously if she's more into the fitness stuff, but like you say, a very well-rounded rider. But what I'm getting at is like finding women that, like, especially over here, and I think in America it's a lot more progressive, but I very rarely see ladies out on the trail here. In the UK, not very much, but a little bit more often than here. So to have Hayley in a bike park of all places, like in a proper downhill bike park, like I've never seen a woman in a bike park before, and it's just awesome. Like, you know, it's really good to see, because that's full on, isn't it? Like bike park stuff, really.
Yeah, you know what? I think bike parks are a little bit people make them out to be more intimidating than they actually are. I mean, it depends on the bike park, obviously. Some of them are really, but I feel like bike parks are pretty easily manageable on a pretty small bike. Like, they're well marked. I think a lot of single track is actually more dangerous and unpredictable. I don't know if that answered your question.
Totally. Yeah, no, the only reason I say it is because it was the first time, and I don't know if it was the actual process of getting on a gondola, the process of getting on a chairlift, and then seeing how steep stuff was. And I don't, like, all bike parks aren't the same either. But for me, like, getting to a bike park that day, I really started to get scared on the lift on the way up. And like I say, it's a shame that you don't see more women riding bikes in general, but in bike parks, it's just, like I say, I've just never seen it before. So it's just awesome that you can enjoy that together, for sure.
Yeah, I would say in especially like Highland Mountain Bike Park has definitely helped promote women at bike parks. So they do a lot of women's camps. So it's not uncommon at all to see a huge group of women riding together there. Yeah. So it's starting to become a little bit more commonplace, cool. Which is awesome.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, for sure it is. Yeah. And what do you study at school, at college?
I study business and marketing.
Yeah, I heard that on one of your videos, I think. Yeah. How far off graduating are you?
In May. That's when I graduate.
Awesome. And then, so is the YouTube channel, or is mountain biking your income then? Do you have a job outside of this, or is this what you're doing, and the business and marketing is just to kind of feed into building kind of a brand?
So that's an interesting question, because YouTube started off as I originally started off doing YouTube. If you look at my very first videos, as I was a rider who wanted to be a World Cup professional, and I didn't have access to the support I needed, and so I started to look around. I was like, oh, I need to get myself out there more, because I'm more than qualified in terms of my race results to be picked up by all these companies. Just no one knows who I was, or no one knew who I was. So I started doing the GoPro runs, and then that's at the same time that I was looking into how to film and all that stuff. And then I realized that there was a need for instructional mountain bike content. And as someone who had a pretty successful background racing, I knew a lot of stuff. I figured, hey, what better way to help people than to use this platform to help share what I know? But that component only happened once I was at school. So that school to me was at first it was when I couldn't find any sponsors, and things just I knew racing was not going to pan out, that I started going to school, because I needed a backup plan quickly, because there's very few professional riders who are actually making a living from racing. Mainly since the Huffy video, that I've started to see some income, some substantial income from YouTube. And then this year, that is my only income.
Brilliant. So you'll be around for a long while yet. The college isn't going to lead into a job that's going to take you away from this. This is kind of the Phil Kmetz brand, and YouTube is kind of your thing now, is it?
Yeah, it's something that came out of nowhere, and I'm embracing it. However, it's not my end goal. I totally plan to be on YouTube for as long as I can. However, my end goal is actually to, I don't know how to word this, but I want to do something in terms of, I want to have my own place that's a skills facility where I can build the crazy things that I've always dreamed of building, as well as some of the things that I'd like to build that I think could help people learn skills better. I think some padded things to maybe learn how to ride some off-camera stuff, some things where people can feel safe to crash and not get hurt. So I think that's a big component missing in the cycling industry right now, and my ultimate goal is to get there. I think YouTube is my stepping stone platform right now.
Brilliant. I did see that on your website, actually. I saw, I was reading through your website there, and I could see that it almost looked as if you were going to try and make a bike park or just something like that. But that makes more sense, yeah. Brilliant.
Yeah, it's something like right now it's a big dream, and I need to take action to make that happen. But I think as I gain more, I guess, what's the word that I'm looking for? As people get to know me a little bit more on YouTube, and it will just help me get to my end goal.
Brilliant, yeah. No, that's awesome, mate. I think, let me just check my questions here. That's been really, really, really good. Oh, tell you what, yeah, one question before.
Oh, sure.
Just one real quick one. I rode today, so I have a lot of trouble with motivation. And like my friends visited a couple of weeks ago, and I didn't ride while they're here, which I expected not to. But then I didn't ride for like a week afterwards, and I couldn't really put my finger on why. And I rode today for the first time in a couple of weeks, and I rode without the camera. And there's something felt very... I think I'd ridden for so long with the camera recording that the rides became more about making sure the gimbal's not doing anything funky. And then obviously I have to do this crazy stuff until I buy a better setup that I have to record externally. And it just becomes a mess of doing stuff, you know. So do you ever ride unrecorded, or is the majority of the stuff that you do recorded?
Absolutely. I think it's really important to... just ride for yourself sometimes. And, as much as I would love to bring everybody along with me 100% of the time, because like that's when some of the really interesting things happen. I need to go out there and just do my own thing. And like this whole week, I've ridden some of the most I've ever ridden. I don't want to say in my life, but definitely in a long time. And I just put the camera aside. The gimbal is right here, and I haven't touched it at all this week, just because it's something that I needed to do. Yeah, I mean, like I think there's definitely an element to riding with a gimbal that you are a slave to the gimbal.
For sure.
It's like, I need to put some more batteries in, and I need to, when I get home, I need to make sure the batteries are charging. I need to make sure the SD cards are importing, and like there's a lot of extra things that go into the ride. And so sometimes you might not even go for that ride because you're thinking about all the different components. And so sometimes it's like good to just like push that aside and like, we're going to ride a bike.
And it affects the way even when you're on the bike, you think, oh man, I should go fast here because it'll look awesome on the footage. I've been quite slow up until now because of the stuff I've been going over, which isn't going to look as good. I really need to go faster. Like you say, you go into that mode that we shouldn't be going into, where you're out of autopilot because you're thinking about a style of riding that will look good on video. That's what I find myself doing.
Yeah, there's definitely a little bit of that goes through my mind. I try to just do the ride that I want to and bring the camera with me. But if I'm going to a bike park, chances are I'm going to throw the gimbal on because I know that will be a pretty interesting day for the most part. But if I'm just going for like a regular cross-country ride on like our local trails, I probably won't put the gimbal on because I know it's not going to be that interesting.